in Lucknow is here on a cold Sunday afternoon. How are you doing, Smriti?
I am well, Neeraj. Thank you so much. And indeed, it's cold. Yes, it is cold.
Welcome. We'll warm things up with our conversation now. Neeti Keval Ramani, who works as an independent education consultant, is here with us today. Good afternoon, or good morning to you, should I say, Neeti? Good afternoon. Super. You're muted. If you could just unmute yourself once.
Yeah, it's afternoon still. We are behind, but not that behind. Maybe an hour and a half. So good afternoon to all of you. Great to be here,
Super.
Neeraj. Great initiative.
Thank you so much. Great to have you, and wonderful to see counselors from outside India as well joining us.
Thank
And
you.
last but not the least, I want to welcome Pragati Pandey from the Aga Khan Academy in Hyderabad. Welcome, Pragati. Okay, maybe Pragati is having some technical challenges, no problem. Nonetheless, welcome Pragati, and happy to have all of you here with us. And thank you to Devesh Rathi for putting this together. We just had a kickoff session with Abhinav Garg of SAT and paper, and we spoke about the vision behind doing the SAT, ACT free online prep across the month of January and introducing the SAT and ACT, and also all of you are hearing this for the first time. We will be providing SAT and ACT prep scholarship worth 25 lakhs to over 70 students with SAT and paper. So this will be full scholarships and partial scholarships to students that we identify as they engage with us across the next 1 month. So that's great news. I really hope that we are able to provide those to students and make a difference in their lives and help them get to the colleges that they deserve to go to. Now, this session, the raison d'etre for doing this workshop is to listen to and learn from expert counselors. Here in front of you are 4 expert counselors who have seen it all, who have been coaching hundreds and thousands of students across 10, 15, 20 years. And they have seen it all in terms of the SAT and the ACT and things that go wrong and things that you need to watch out for, things that kids do right, and then listen to that and see if that makes sense for you as you embark on your own test prep journey. And they're going to share secrets about case studies of previous kids that they have worked with. So in a few moments, I will invite them one by one. But before that, I just wanted to provide a little bit of sort of context, about the SAT and the ACT. And please feel free to correct me, my fellow counselors, okay? I know maybe everything I'm going to say might not be totally correct, so I'm happy for you to interject at any point. So, SAT started as a scholarship test at Harvard. They wanted to identify who to give the scholarship to, and in sort of 100 plus years, it evolved into a standardized test that could be given to students from all across the US and all over the world to test everybody on a equal platform. There is a lot of noise being made about the SAT and colleges increasingly going test optional in the US and colleges around the world using it differently from perhaps the way they are using it in the US. A lot of data also showing that there is not a very strong correlation between performance on the SAT and ACT and performance at college. And yet, the reality is we don't have an alternative. So in the absence of an alternative, it is perhaps the best thing that we have in assessing students on one platform. Now, we are not a homogeneous world, and to expect that the SAT will be perfect and representative of all the students from everywhere is never going to happen. So one very important message from me to all of you is that SAT is only one piece of the puzzle. All right. When you think about your college admissions, now, if you're here in this session, you're perhaps looking at colleges in the US, you're looking at colleges around the world. Many colleges around the world will follow what we call a holistic template of admissions. and SAT is just one of the pieces. And when I say SAT, please refer to that as SAT and ACT interchangeably, right? And what is it really testing, right? When you look at the basic SAT or ACT paper, to my mind, what it's testing is very much basic logical thinking ability, your basic critical reading ability, your basic ability to interpret data when it's put in front of you in complex manner and to decipher it and identify trends, and a basic knowledge of English grammar and comprehension. So a student's processing ability, so to say. So somebody who does well on the SAT or the ACT, um, I would say they're good at processing information, right? It's so to say an aptitude test, but at the same time, it's not really just a test of your aptitude, because it is also testing your rigor and your stamina. Because you know what? It's not a 1 hour test. It's a multiple hour test with breaks and multiple sections. And I have always seen students who are very creative and who have shorter attention spans. They're struggling with this thing because 1 hour, 2 hours into it, attention goes away. So while yes, SAT and ACT are a test of your critical thinking ability, reading ability, and aptitude for data processing, I think it is at the same time a test of your academic stamina and your ability to put your mind down and in a disciplined manner and keep solving problems one after the other after the other. I also find, and this is my little tidbit for all of you students out there, those who take it in a happy mood tend to do better. Vast majority of the people, me included, and I'm guilty of this a little more than 20 years ago, approaching the test with massive nervousness, right? Because at the end of the day, a word test is a very negative energy, right? I mean, the moment we hear the word test and SAT, and we get scared and get shivers. Yet there are those students that I have seen who approached it in a jolly, happy mood, relaxed, carefree, so to say, yet caring at the same time. And they tended to do better, right? They were relaxed and they were breathing better, they were thinking better. So my secret routine to all of you is, I would say, you're going to take the SAT or the ACT. The worst thing that you can do is cram knowledge into your head and your heart the day before, 24 hours before. Stop studying. I think you've probably studied enough for it. You've practiced enough for it. You've acquainted yourself with the test. Go have fun. Go shopping. Go for a movie. Go play games. Go meet your friends. Okay. Have a nice dinner. Spend time with your friends and family. Try to go to bed early. It's hard, I know. Try to go to bed early. Get a good night rest. Wake up in the morning. Go for a little jog. Go for a little workout. Get some good breakfast. Get some good grub. Arrange your backpacks at night. Don't forget your passport. How many times in India have I been asked, is it okay if I take my Aadhaar card or PAN card or something like that, right? No. Please take your passport. Please pack your bag properly. Please have your hall ticket and all of that other logistical administrative stuff, your number 2 pencils and what have you. Everything, pack it the night before. Keep your clothes ready so that the next day morning you don't have to worry last minute. My mom, where is my passport? I can't find it. That will only add to the stress, right, of any other day. So most important thing, approach it with a happy mind. And I can tell you that maybe it'll just take up your score by 100, 150 points, right? And I have seen this. I have seen this with multiple students that who were able to sort of suppress their stress levels and be relaxed, did better on the test. One of my fellow counselors used the word attitude. It's a test of attitude. It's a test of aptitude. I couldn't agree more. And all I would say is, don't have such negative energy towards it. It's this big, scary word. Don't let it scare you. Okay. Have fun with it. You're going to do better in it. So, having dropped the first pearls of wisdom, or what I think are pearls of wisdom, I want to pass the mic on to Pragati Pandey. Welcome, Pragati. I didn't get a chance to say hi earlier.
Hi, Neeraj. Thank you so much for, that wonderful introduction. And as counselors, all of us have been working with students for so long, and for students for such a long time. We understand the nervousness and the anxiety that they go through and why they go through it. But a wonderful piece of advice. So thank you for sharing that. So hi, everyone. Though I can't see you guys, students, but, uh, you know, having worked with students for such a long time, one misconception, which we come across all the time is when students come to me and say, but ma'am, I don't want to go to the US, so why should I take the SAT or the ACT? It's not required. And to a large extent, I end up telling them, yeah, that's true to quite an extent. But SAT is expanding its reach to a variety of different countries. Currently, SAT scores are used across 85 different countries, and they are used for admissions purposes. So whether it's a university in Lebanon, whether it is a university in Japan or in Hong Kong, of course, some of them are very popular and many of you know about it. That's Yale NUS or the National University of Singapore or NTU or Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. Many of you are aware of that. But there are so many more which use the SAT. I would like to focus on the Indian context, which is very, very new. So the SAT scores are used by a lot of Indian universities these days for admissions purposes. So if you look at a university like Ashoka, for example, which many of you have started looking as a new age modern liberal arts university, they use the SAT score for giving you unconditional admission, right? So unconditional means that they confirm your admission even before your final results are out. So that's a huge peace of mind, right? That your SAT scores can get you an admission in the Indian context where it's so very competitive to get admission with the huge population that we have, right? Another thing about the Indian universities using SAT is there is a consortium of Indian universities which uses SAT scores for giving you full tuition scholarships. Okay, so there's a huge list of Indian universities which you will find if you go on the website international.collegeboard.com. You will find a list of Indian universities as well, which give you full tuition scholarship if you score really high on the SAT 1 exam. Okay, so don't think of SAT as an American entry examination. Think of it as an examination which can give you entry into premier universities around the globe, and most of them with American style education. So we are looking primarily at liberal arts universities across the globe which use the SAT scores for giving you admissions as well as giving you scholarships. Okay, coming back to the Indian context, since we are, having the session for Indian students primarily, and of course students from all across the globe who might be looking at India as a study destination. We have some wonderful universities, I would say. SAT taken in grade 11 is not valid for scholarships. Okay, you need to take that SAT in grade 12. So now is the right time for those who are in grade 12 and those who are about to go into grade 12 to start planning your SAT. Of course, my other colleagues are going to talk more in detail about other aspects of the SAT. If you're looking at the Middle East, which has a lot of American style universities, you need to look at SAT scores. If you're looking at Hong Kong, if you're looking at, even some Canadian universities, though we think that Canada doesn't need SAT scores, it's not a prerequisite, but if you have an SAT score, it gives you a huge advantage in terms of, your admissions being more faster and them being able to look at your qualifications equivalently across the world. So when we have a variety of boards across the world, whether it's a CBSE, ICSE, IB, IGCSE, or it could be the state curriculums or national curriculums in different countries. So SAT gives them a platform to look at you equally. So as I said, go on international.collegeboard.org and you will be able to find information about universities. There are thousands of universities across the world, and Neeraj, maybe later on I'll share that Excel sheet which has the entire list of universities which use SAT for admissions purposes, and we can share that with the entire group who is attending today. So I've stuck to my 5 minutes, and I'll be there towards the end for the Q&As if anybody has questions. So thank you so much.
That's a fantastic message. Thank you so much for that, Pragati. I appreciate the offer to share the sheet. We will definitely do that with all the registered students. We have thousands of students who have registered, who are watching us here and also on YouTube Live. Students, please feel free to ask all your questions. We will address them hopefully continuously across the session, but definitely towards the end. Now, Pragati's message is so apt, right? Because as a student who is in sort of grade 9, 10, 11, or sometimes even early 12, you're not sure where you're going to go. So, and the sort of the message in the air is, oh, you're going to the US, you need to take the SAT. Now, that itself is not entirely true, because there are so many SAT optional colleges, and that's a really fuzzy word. You need to go into the fine print of what that means for every institution and every major and possibly even scholarship combination. So for those of you who are looking at the US, you should know that there are institutions that require the test. There are institutions that don't require the test. The ones that don't, please go into the fine print and read carefully and see how you can put your best foot forward. Of course, during the time of COVID, we are having a very unusual year in which most, or if not all, of the institutions have waived their requirement for SAT and ACT. And I think going forward, it's going to be interesting to watch how colleges unfold their post-COVID holistic admission strategy. Such a valid point by Pragati, because it started in the US, right? And the vast majority of the US institutions needed it. And the US anyways tends to be this sort of gravitational center of the higher education world because of the sheer volume of the colleges there as compared to all across the world. But SAT and ACT scores are used by institutions around the world. Different institutions use it for different reasons. And a fun fact is, I want to share with all of you that College Board only has 2 offices in the world. One is in New York City, and the other one is in New Delhi, if you guys didn't know. So imagine going forward how important SAT and ACT are going to be to India and Indian institutions, right? So great points. Thank you so much for that, Pragati. Let me pass the mic to Smriti from City Montessori. Welcome, Smriti.
Thank you so much, Neeraj. And it's really great to be a part of this panel. And what I have from my side is, as seeing the kids in the examination hall, what I see, what I observe is, and what makes the difference to everyone. And here I think it will make difference to all the students who are going to appear for a SAT in the future. So the most important thing is that SAT is a time-oriented test. It's a time-based test. You have to understand that every section is marked with a particular time set. You can only work in the time allotted, and then you will have to move on. You have to read, you have to answer. And the third thing is you have to mark your answers. That's one of the most important things which children generally tend to overlook. They don't calculate that there's a time when you're going to mark those answers, right? This is the first step. Second thing, moving on to one thing, that which are the sections, how do we actually navigate in the sections? The first section, when we do the reading section, that is time for 65 minutes. So you have got 65 minutes to work on the reading sections as the first section. Trust me, students, I have actually seen kids going in the panic zone in the very first section, that is the reading section. So the first thing is, please be calm. While reading, you need only one thing, and that is concentration. If you concentrate on the reading section, you will be able to navigate through the entire section. You have to maintain your calm and perform on that particular section. Because if you don't work on this section rightfully right, you will be thinking of this section in the entire examination. So the first section, you will have to be really calm, you'll have to be really controlled and move on. Now moving on to the next part, that is for 35 minutes, where again, it's an English section. And that section itself is like particularly on the language part. Very easy to perform, very smartly a child can handle this thing. It's only for 35 minutes and you can navigate it through again very easily. You know, there's nothing very difficult about this section. You have to just keep on reading. It's very much pertaining to the language part of English. And then the next section, which is the mathematics section, which is without the calculator for 25 minutes. And the last section, which is for 55 minutes, again, a math section with calculator. Right, one thing that is very important, that you have breaks in between. And during these breaks, rather than moving on from the zone of the examination, you have to be very much in the zone of the examination. Now, the most important thing is, while giving the SAT, one has to be very smart with approach. Remember one thing, the exam is not going to test your knowledge of concepts. This is one thing which I really want to clear on the examination pattern. It is not the examination where you will be having a lot of mathematical concepts, a lot of scientific concepts. No, it's an examination which is based on how smartly you handle it with attitude, with aptitude. Now, when you practice a SAT at home, what you have to do is the first section, which is for 65 minutes, at home, time it for 55 minutes or for 60 minutes to control the anxiety of the examination hall. So trust me, students, you will have a lot of anxiety no matter how good, how well versed you are with all the topics. To control this anxiety or to practice this anxiety sitting in your own comfort zones at your home, what you should do is time your tests a little lesser time. Like for a 65-minute section, work on that section only for 55 minutes or work on that section only for 60 minutes. Because when you work on in these lines of anxiety, you will perform better on the day of the examination. That's one thing. Now the second thing, as Neeraj said, the little things that you have to carry, your bags, your food, your water, do not go to the examination hall and without having food. I mean, this is one thing which I would say, kids, please do not go empty stomach. It's not a good idea at all. I've been conducting SAT since last 3.5 years, and I see kids all in pale colors because of not having food. And that again increases the level of anxiety. So through the entire examination, all these 4 sections, and from my side, I would say that do attempt the SAT essay. Do not be impatient about attempting the essay part, because a lot of students says that, you know, I can't sit for more than these many number of hours. So don't do that. Practice it at home, sitting for 4 hours, 4.5 hours, so that you have that habit of sitting for long hours and perform there. That is vital. So this is from my side, and I think I did not exceed the time.
No, thank you so much for that, Smriti. Very, very useful, I think, because, you know, when you walk into a test and it's so normal, you're doing the first section, maybe you missed out a question or maybe you didn't know how to answer it, and it puts you in a totally different spin, right? And then you go into a negative zone. So it's very important not to do that, to remain calm. I know it's easier said than done for us. It's easier to say, it's harder for the students to live it, but that's the right thing to do. And to keep moving forward, it's very important to pace yourself. You know, the way our minds are structured, it's very important from time to time to disconnect with the academics and close your eyes and catch your breath. And very important to, like you pointed out, to, you know, really use your 10-minute breaks appropriately. So wonderful messages there. Any thoughts that you would suggest, Smriti, on how long students should prepare for before they approach the SAT and the ACT? I know there is no one right answer for that, but just any wisdom around that.
Yeah, so what I suggest is, Neeraj, to all the students, that don't take too long, don't be too committed to a particular examination that, I was preparing for it since years. So one thing, what I've seen is there's a particular scale. So if all of us know that there's a threshold, you'll reach the threshold because you have a set of skills. So SAT is basically oriented out of set of skills that you have. You can go to a particular level, reach the threshold, and then you will come back. You will not go beyond that threshold. So first thing is identify that. I've seen students doing wonders in 3 months. They have, like, they've really excelled. They started practicing, and in 3 months time, say, so they started practicing and they started giving the examinations at the same time. They were doing the timed exams, and that was more than enough. I've seen students getting a score of 1500 plus or 1450 plus in a time span of 3 months. So, and yes, there was a 4 hour continuous effort, where I really heard students saying this thing that, ma'am, I used to sit for 4 hours because I was not accustomed to sit for 4 hours on a regular basis. So I made myself sit on a chair and, give the examination in those for those 4 hours. So that is very important thing for all of us, for the students particularly, that, you have to get into the habit, because for 4 hours, if you don't sit, you will not know that what exactly will happen to you once you go in the examination. And that is going to, it's going to create troubles for you. So 3 4 months would be ideal for preparation, and if you can sit for 4 hours, I think you're there. You will definitely get a very good score.
I'm very happy to hear you say that, because in my own mind, 100 days was my benchmark, that your average student, if prepared well for 100 days, should be sufficient. But, many a times I see that students just walk into it, they just sign up for it, and I'll take it, and that's one of the biggest mistakes. Like, so many times I've seen students who came to me later and said, oh, I got 1200 something, 1100. What happened? You look like a pretty bright kid. Oh, I just took it. I just signed up for it and I just took it, just to see how I would do it. So it's a classic mistake, right? So don't treat the real SAT as your diagnostic. You should be doing your diagnostic at home. um, Another thing that I saw is, people always ask, and I think somebody asked this question here as well, when is the right time to take it, right? So I would say that, what, the right time to take it is when you're ready. The worst time to take it is your friend is taking it, that's why you're taking it, like you're rushing into it for some reason. And I always see this, that students who take it like 3 4 5 7 times, like, that looks really bad. you know the best students that I have come across are the ones who really prepared for it thoroughly and finish it in the first attempt, maximum second attempt, right? So for all of you out there, please don't plan to spend like 6 months, 1 year, 2 years doing all this, because even your institutions are looking at all this. What else are you doing in your life? Or are you just spending your entire high school preparing for this one test for that one morning, right? So thank you, Smriti. Let me pass the mic on to Sonia Soni. Now, a fun tidbit that I discovered about Sonia is that she runs the largest SAT center in the state of Maharashtra, and that she's a clinical psychologist. So I think it's going to be fun listening to a different perspective from Sonia.
Thank you so much, Neeraj. And I think I would hands down believe every word of what Smriti, Pragati, and you've shared. Just a couple of thoughts, because that clinical aspect keeps me alive even when I'm playing my role, as a college counselor now. So one of the things that Smriti said, I would reiterate that entire fact that it's a test of an attitude, how you handle the stress situation. I have seen kids who, when they get that 10 minutes break, they think that 10 minutes has been granted to them so that they can take out their book and start mugging up things. So I'm not sure whether each one of you understand that SAT never repeats their questions. They're never repeated. So I really don't understand why are kids rushing in to open their book. Rather, that's a break that you need to give your mind so that your mind is relaxed, rejuvenated, and you're back with that same energy. Talking about food, which is so important, your body needs the right amount of carbohydrates to make your brain function and also to give you the energy to sit through that long marathon of questions which are coming through maths, English, essay. Another thing is that the essays are often given as if, what if we don't give them? I would say it can be a very, very unpleasant experience, because most of the competitive universities in US and even back in India have now started looking at the essay scores as a very, very integral aspect of your writing capabilities, which reflects your critical thinking and reasoning aspects. One important fact which I've seen being a test coordinator is that students panic. They panic a lot while they're doing their test, and this is what hits your score. Please understand that there are different sections of your SAT, but somewhere different sections are also integrated when it comes as a final score on your paper. So whatever has happened in one section, of course, will have an impact on your brain, that you did not do well, you left it, but you should not let that impact your working on the current section. Where a lot of kids I've seen, they get so worked up that they'll come out and, when they're talking in their breaks and I'm moving around, they would be like, oh, I did that badly, rather than just stopping the conversation there and thinking about how do I buckle up to look at what I'm doing well in my next section. Of course, the paraphernalia is very, very important. One of the things which I would say, and I have it written on my hall ticket, is that please carry the right kind of clothing on you, because there are some centers which are completely aircon. And then I often see kids like shivering and doing their test. Whereas I would say that it's always good to read up about the school that you're going, read up how far that school is from your place. I have seen kids who come and say, oh my God, I thought I was registered for X center because I went there last time. You've come at 8:05 and unfortunately the doors shut at 8 o'clock. So these are some very, very important tips to be preparing. Another thing is that I want to touch upon the aspect of a lot of kids today are going through a lot of educational disabilities and difficulties, especially there's a huge population that is being affected, I would say, or I would say they are kind of combating learning disability, which is like dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, and dyspraxia. If you have any of those problems, please don't hesitate, because College Board has 100% accommodation for you all. And it's your prerogative to ask for that accommodation. It's not a favor that your school counselor does on you, but that is a need that you have. And that is something that will help you to score a good score, which is important for the universities. Um, I'm not sure how many of us take it as, oh my God, it's going to be like a black spot on my application. Not at all. Universities are very open in accepting you the way you are, because they are looking at a diversity. And please understand that a learning disability is not a mental block. It's just the way you process your information, which is little different from how some of us would process. So just in case you think you have been getting accommodations in school, why not just go ahead and take it from the College Board also, which is very, very open about helping you out on that. And just one last piece of advice, which I would say, is that if you do your grade 10 board once, if you do your grade 12 board once, then why do you want to give SAT 10 times? If something is important to you, live up to the expectation that they have already set. The benchmark is there. I don't know, but I feel that if I'm made to do the same thing 10 times, the vigor of it goes away. So I have done my ICSE once, I've done my ISC once. So let's live up to the fact that we should do SAT once, because there are some colleges which will not accept a super scoring. What do you mean by super scoring? The super scoring means that each score which is better n number of times you do, you are given the choice to pick up the best score and present it. There are some colleges that will not even want to look at that kind of a score. And I'm sure the competitive ones are the ones who focus on you doing things the best the first time and the last time. So that's it from my end. Don't want to be eating into your time, Neeraj. Thank you so much. And I'll be available to answer any questions on accommodations post maybe from hearing back from Neeti.
Thank you so much, Sonia, for those wonderful insights. In my mind, whenever I work with LD students, I just think of people who swim differently, and I swim a certain way and another student swims a certain different way, and we both learn differently. So I always think of the word disability and I get a little creepy. I'm like, oh, it should be called LD, learning difference, rather than learning disability. Once I read a joke which said, I'm not disabled, I have to put up with your shit. You have problems. I don't have any disability. I love that quote. And thanks for bringing up that point, because people don't realize, the some statistics I saw some time ago was like 18% of the population has some form of a learning difference, right? That's pretty high. So most people in the world might have a learning difference and have not been tested. So those of you who find themselves, learning differently, I would encourage you to go get tested and go get accommodation, and perhaps you will enjoy the SAT process a little better. So that was a wonderful message. Thanks for that.
Just to add, there's an entire section on the website of College Board which talks about accommodation, and I will share the link with you so that you can share it with the students. Neeraj, I think you're on mute, so we can't hear.
Sorry. Thank you for that. So you can see in the audience the power of having multiple counselors on your side rather than just one. Already we have two fantastic resources for you. Having said that, we come to Neeti, and I'm very curious to hear Neeti's thoughts and how she sees it from her perspective, and how best students can prepare for this. Go ahead, Neeti, all yours.
Great, thanks, Neeraj. I don't know what will I contribute after all you vanguards have spoken. So I'm going to try and plug in my 2 bit. I'm going to talk about how to approach SAT and ACT, basically test prep, in these uncertain times. There is an elephant in the room. There's a lot of talk that you hear right now about new terms are trending every day, right? From test optional to test blind to test free to moratoriums. All of these terms around. So I'm sure there's this question in the mind of students as to, do we really need to take this test? Where are we going? Can I get into a top university without a test score? How important is it? So I'm going to try and approach it with my perspective, what I have seen this year and what I feel is the best approach for students moving forward, at least for the batch of 2022 and 2023. So basically, US admissions has always been a moving target, right? The landscape changes very, very quickly. This year, COVID has hit right at its core by not making it possible for a lot of test centers to run the tests. So first thing I guess we all must understand is this new wave of test optional that we see has for most universities not happened out of choice. They wanted the students to apply and they wanted to work around the difficulties that students were facing, and hence a lot of those universities went test optional. So it's not a question of choice. We don't know whether that trend is going to continue or it's not going to continue. We don't know what's going to happen, but tests have always been an important part of a person's profile, of a student's profile, and a good test score will only benefit the student. A good test score will never work against the student. It is a corroborating piece of evidence to say, yes, if you see a 99 on 100, or if you see a IB score of 41 on 42, and if you have a great score, it's adding up. So that's an important part that students need to understand, that even if the test optional wave continues, we don't know, it's still going to be optional. That means as a student, you have more power in your hands to exercise and show a good score when you have one. And in case you don't have a good score and the test optional wave is going forward, it's still working for you because you can choose not to show it. And it's still not going to be a barrier to entry, which means you can go in and take the test with less anxiety. You can go in and take the test and say, okay, I have more control over what I'm going to do with my score in case it's a bad score. I don't need to be freaking out. I don't need to, think that, oh, if I don't have a certain score, I cannot apply to certain universities. You can still go in with understanding that you have a lot more power than students maybe 3 years, before who were in the same situation as you are today. So it really you should look at it very positively, that yes, you need to test because you want to have a good score, because a good score never hurted a student, won't hurt a student. And if it's a bad score, you can still strategize. You can still strategize and you can still see how are you going to pave your way forward, how are you going to use this information to your advantage. So that's all from my end.
Fantastic, Neeti. I think, put your best foot forward in admission is something we always tell our students.
Right.
So put your best foot forward. And if that best foot forward has a strong score that you believe is a competitive score, go for it. I think we'll have to watch how the test optional movement gathers pace and what happens with the UC and their decision to come out with an alternative test.
Right.
And after COVID-19, how colleges continue to or discontinue their test optional strategies. So it's a very, very relevant point. I know that, of course, we are doing a SAT and ACT prep. We are assuming that these tests are going to be important going forward. And to my mind, they are. And it's not just about the US. I think colleges increasingly in India are also demanding SAT scores. So I don't believe the tests are going away. I just think that the relevance is changing and how they are read is changing. And I believe, like you said, students will have the right to put it forward when they believe it is in their best interest, So that's a great point. I'm not so sure how many students in our audience would appreciate that point, but keep it in mind and just remember the phrase, put your best foot forward and put your strongest test score forward. So having said that, I want to thank everybody, the wonderful counselors who have taken time out during their vacation time on a Sunday afternoon. So thank you so much. I owe all of you a coffee or a beer or a meal, what have you. So very much looking forward to meeting all of you when COVID-19 is behind us. Thank you so much again and sharing your wisdom with the audience. Please encourage all your students to participate. We are really excited about what's happening here. And thank you again for presenting. We'll stay, Devesh and I will just stay back. We'll try and answer a few more questions. But thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Neeraj, and
Thank you
thanks
so
for having
much,
me.
everyone. All
Thank
the
you.
best, students
Thank
and
you.
parents
All the
who
best.
are
All
on
the
the group.
best.
Yeah, take care. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
So I'm going to continue answering some questions.